Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I worked for a middle manager who hated technology in 2024. There I was, looking at another unread email to my middle manager. I've been working at this marketing firm for about 8 months. Decent pay, okay benefits, but the management structure was outdated. My department handled client accounts for several major retail chains. Time-sensitive updates, budget approvals, creative briefs, all of it required quick communication. For most people, this meant emails. Quick, efficient, documented emails. But not for my boss. It all started when our team missed a deadline for a major campaign because he never saw the approval request emails. The client was furious, and during the emergency damage control meeting, several of us pointed out that we'd sent multiple messages about it. He stood up and slammed his hand on the conference table. He loudly told us he didn't have time to look through 100 stupid emails every day. He demanded that if something was important, we should print it and hand it to him because he didn't read emails. The room went silent. Our department head just sighed and moved on to damage control. After the meeting, we all looked at each other in disbelief. One co-worker asked if our boss had seriously just said he doesn't read work emails in 2024. I replied that apparently reading was too complicated for him. If my boss wanted printed emails, who was I to deny him? The very next morning, I started my new routine. I sent an email about an upcoming client call, then immediately printed it out. I walked the 20 steps to his office and placed it on his desk. I politely told him I was providing the information about tomorrow's client call, printed out as he had asked. He barely looked up and mumbled for me to just leave it there. 1 hour later, I sent another email about budget projections, printed it, walked to his office. I told him I was delivering the budget projections he had asked for yesterday, printed as requested. He frowned slightly and gave a short thank you. By the end of that first day, I'd visited his office 5 times. Each time I wore the same helpful smile. Each time I reminded him this was as requested. The next day I started printing everything. A colleague accidentally copied me on an email with a cat meme, printed. The company-wide message about the vending machine being restocked, printed. The automated reminder about changing network passwords, printed that too. By the third day, his desk had small stacks of paper forming. He'd started giving me irritated looks when I appeared in his doorway. He asked me if I didn't have actual work to do besides printing things. I replied that I was just making sure he got all the important information, like he asked, since he didn't read emails. By the end of the first week, his once tidy desk was buried. He'd started stuffing papers into drawers, but I could see the mess growing. He was missing things anyway because now, instead of unread emails, he had unsorted papers. The client relations manager came looking for him about a missed approval. I helpfully mentioned I printed that information for him 3 days ago. The manager asked where it was then. My boss stammered that it must be somewhere as he searched through piles of paper, finding everything except the approval document. Week 2 was when things got really fun. Now other team members had joined my crusade. His office was becoming a paper sanctuary. He'd started avoiding eye contact when any of us walked up with printed emails. The breaking point came when he missed a meeting with the company president because the calendar invitation was buried somewhere in the paper mountain of 2024. The next morning, I saw a company-wide email that made me smile wide. Subject: Updated Communication Protocol. From Boss. Effective immediately, please send all communications via email only. Do not print emails unless specifically requested for a meeting. I check my inbox regularly and will respond to all messages within 24 hours. Thank you for your cooperation. I printed just one final email, this new policy, and placed it gently on his desk. I told him I was just making sure he had a printed copy of his new policy since I wouldn't want him to miss it. He looked at me while admitting defeat. He told me that printing would no longer be necessary. When I asked if he was sure because it was no trouble, he said he was sure and asked me to just email him. 2 weeks later, our department's efficiency rating improved dramatically. Projects moved forward on schedule, clients received timely responses, and my trips to the supply closet for printer paper decreased by 95%. I'm a 27-year-old woman who got married to my husband last April. We planned everything, sending out invitations a year in advance with reminders 6 months before the big day. I wanted everything to be perfect, with my entire family there to celebrate with us. My brother, 22, is the youngest of 4 kids in our family, 3 girls and him, the only boy. Since he was born, my parents have treated him like their precious golden child who could do no wrong. Whatever he wanted, he got. Whenever he messed up, there was always an excuse. This special treatment has caused a lot of tension between us siblings. He still acts like a raging hormonal 16-year-old boy, throwing tantrums when he doesn't get his way and expecting everyone to bend over backward for him. It's gotten worse since he started dating his fiancée, 21. She enables his bad behavior, telling him that we don't appreciate him and that we should be grateful to have him as a sibling. My parents are no help. They think my sisters and I don't understand him and don't give him enough grace, whatever that means. Being an adult man comes with no expectations of maturity if you're the baby boy of the family. About a week before my wedding, my brother told me he wouldn't be coming to my wedding because he and his girlfriend had planned a vacation for that week. I was shocked and reminded him that I had sent out invitations a year ago and even sent reminders 6 months before the date. He brushed it off, saying that this vacation was important to them. I begged him to reconsider, telling him how much his presence meant to me, especially since he was supposed to be our ring bearer. I called my mom for help. She told me not to worry and promised she would make sure he would be there. I believed her and trusted that my family wouldn't let me down on such an important day. On my wedding day, I was getting ready with my sisters and bridesmaids, feeling excited and nervous. About an hour before I was supposed to walk down the aisle, my oldest sister pulled me aside with bad news. She told me that my brother wasn't coming after all. He and his girlfriend had left for their vacation the day before. I was devastated. I started crying, my makeup running down my face. My sisters and husband-to-be spent 45 minutes calming me down so I could walk down the aisle without looking like a mess. I had my heart set on my entire family being there, and my brother had abandoned me. I managed to enjoy my wedding day. My husband was amazing, my sisters were supportive, and most of our guests had no idea about the drama happening behind the scenes. A few months later, my brother told everyone that he and his girlfriend were engaged. I tried to be happy for him. Then he announced his wedding date, May 30th of this year. He made it clear that he expected all family members to attend, saying this was the most important day of his life and he needed his family's support. His fiancée even sent a group text to all family members saying that attendance at their wedding was mandatory and that they would not accept any excuses for absence. After he skipped my wedding for a vacation, he had the nerve to demand that everyone attend his. I started thinking about not going at all. I don't get along well with his fiancée, who puts me and my sisters down while praising my brother. And after what he did to me, did I really owe him my presence? I told my mom that I was thinking about not attending. She was shocked and told me that of course I would be going. When I pointed out that he hadn't come to my wedding, she said that was different because he had plans. I reminded her that these were plans he made after getting my invitation and that he could have changed them. She said I was being petty and this was my brother's big day. I should have known better than to tell my mom this. Within hours, my phone was full of angry texts and calls from my brother, his fiancée, and both my parents. My brother called me a brat and said I was making everything about myself. His fiancée said this proved what she'd always believed about me, not appreciating my brother, and called me selfish and petty. Even my dad joined in, saying it was bad that I couldn't support my brother on his wedding day after everything they had done for me. My sisters had my back. My middle sister told me that I didn't have to go and that my brother had made his choice when he skipped my wedding. My oldest sister told me to stand my ground, saying this double standard had gone on long enough. My husband was also on my side, saying that if I didn't want to go, we wouldn't go, and that my brother had no right to demand my presence after what he had done. Then I found out something else. My husband wasn't even invited to the wedding. Neither was my oldest sister's wife. The fiancé had decided that no spouses would be attending because she said they were temporary, and she didn't want them in any wedding pictures. She said that only blood relatives should attend because spouses come and go, but family is forever. My oldest sister decided not to attend because of this rule. She said if her wife wasn't welcome, then neither was she. I called my brother to ask about this rule. When I asked if it was true that my husband wasn't invited, he said it was family only and no big deal. I told him that my husband was family, but my brother said it wasn't his decision and that his fiancée didn't want random people in their wedding photos. When I told him that this random person was his brother-in-law, he said I was being dramatic again and told me to just come by myself since it was only one day. After this talk, I made my decision. I sent a text to my brother, his fiancée, and my parents saying I wouldn't be attending the wedding. I explained that if my husband wasn't welcome, then neither was I and wished them a nice ceremony. The fallout was huge. My parents threatened to cut me off financially, which meant nothing since I'm independent. My brother said I was dead to him. His fiancée called me every bad name she could think of. But here's the thing. My middle sister decided to stand with me and our oldest sister. She also said no to the invitation. So now, none of the groom's sisters will be at his wedding. Maybe we're all stubborn. But after years of watching my brother get away with treating people badly while being praised for it, this feels like the first time there have been results for his actions. The wedding is next week and my sisters, our spouses and I are planning a fun weekend getaway instead, because we're all temporary anyway. Life as a single parent isn't easy. I've been raising my two kids, a 7-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl, by myself since my spouse walked out 3 years ago. We get by, but it's always a balancing act between work, child care, and trying to keep some sanity. Last month, I got a call that could change everything. A marketing firm downtown wanted to interview me for a position that paid nearly double what I make now. The benefits were amazing too. Health insurance that would actually cover my daughter's asthma medications and flexible hours that would let me be there for school events. It was the opportunity I've been waiting for. The interview was scheduled for Wednesday at 2 p.m. I had it all planned out. My mom would watch the kids at her place across town. She's always my go-to for childcare emergencies. I was in the front yard, loading some toys into the car for the kids to play with at Grandma's when my neighbor poked her head over the fence. She was in her early 50s with that perfect suburban haircut. We'd exchanged pleasantries since I moved in, but never really connected. She was always watching, always commenting on how my grass needed cutting or how my kids were energetic. I knew her type, the neighborhood busybody who thought her opinion mattered more than anyone else's. I mentioned to her that I was getting ready to take the kids to my mom's because I had a big job interview that day. She immediately perked up. She told me I didn't need to drag my children all the way to my mother's place and offered to watch them herself since she was home all day anyway. I hesitated at first, telling her that I didn't want to impose and that my mom really didn't mind watching them. But my neighbor wouldn't take no for an answer. She kept telling me it made no sense to drive across town when she was right next door. She promised the kids would have fun, mentioning they could bake cookies and play in her backyard. She made it sound so easy and helpful, and I was already nervous about the interview. Cutting 30 minutes of driving each way would give me time to review my portfolio one more time. When I asked if she was sure, pointing out that my kids could be a handful, she told me it was no trouble at all. She told me to bring them over whenever I was ready and not to worry about a thing, saying how happy she was to help a hard-working parent. I thanked her repeatedly as I dropped the kids off. She seemed almost excited, ushering them in with promises of fun activities. My son looked a little uncertain. He's shy with new people, but my daughter was already asking about the cookies. I gave them both big hugs and told them to be good for our neighbor, mentioning I'd be back in a few hours. My neighbor told me to take my time, said they'd be fine, and wished me luck on my interview. The interview went well. I felt confident, prepared, and they seemed impressed with my portfolio. They even hinted that I was a top candidate. I drove home with a sense of hope I hadn't felt in years. When I got back to my neighborhood, I parked in my driveway and walked next door to pick up my kids. I rang the doorbell, smiling and ready to tell them about how well the interview had gone. The door opened and my neighbor stood there with a completely different expression than when I'd left. Her smile was gone, replaced with a tight-lipped look that made my stomach drop. I greeted her and asked how the kids had been. Her response was cold and sharp. She described my children as demanding, messy, and exhausting. Her tone entirely different from the helpful person from earlier. I said sorry if they had been difficult and thanked her for watching them. I tried to peek around her to see my kids, but she shifted to block my view. That's when she told me she wanted $200 for babysitting. When I asked her to explain, she said it was $50 per hour for the 4 hours I was gone. I stared at her. I reminded her that she had offered to watch them, saying it was no trouble and had never mentioned payment. She asked if I really thought she would watch my children for free. She complained about giving up her entire afternoon, having to feed and entertain them. She mentioned my daughter spilling juice on her carpet and my son repeatedly asking when I was coming back. She told me that $200 was reasonable. I stood my ground, pointing out that we never agreed to any payment and that she had insisted on watching them when I was already planning to take them to my mom's for free childcare. Her response chilled me. She told me to say goodbye to my kids, then slammed the door in my face. I stood there for a moment, not processing what had happened. Did my neighbor just take my children hostage over a babysitting fee she'd invented after the fact? I knocked again, harder this time. No answer. I called out for my kids. I could hear my daughter crying inside. I told her to open the door, telling her she couldn't keep my children. When there was no response, I started pounding on the door with both fists. I was shouting now, my heart racing, demanding she give me my kids right away. A couple walking their dog stopped to stare. Lights came on in houses across the street. I didn't care. I took out my phone and called 911, telling them my neighbor was refusing to give me back my children unless I paid her money we never agreed to. Within minutes, 2 police cars pulled up, lights flashing. By then, half the neighborhood was outside watching. I was crying as I told the officers what happened. One officer told me they would handle it and asked me to step back. They walked to the door and knocked, saying they were police and asking her to open the door. My neighbor opened the door. She thanked the officers for coming, telling them I was causing a disturbance by refusing to pay her for child care services. The officer told her that while they knew there was a dispute over payment, she couldn't keep someone's children as payment, as that was illegal. My neighbor tried to defend herself, saying the kids were fine and that she was just teaching me a lesson about responsibility, saying people need to pay for services. When asked where the children were, she told them they were in the living room but said again that I wasn't getting them until I paid her. The second officer told her that she needed to let the children go to their parent right now or she would be arrested for unlawful restraint. My neighbor's face turned red. She said this was ridiculous, saying that I should be the one in trouble because she did me a favor and I was trying to cheat her. My kids came running when they heard the noise. My daughter was crying and my son looked scared. I knelt down to comfort them, telling them it was okay as they ran to me. The officers blocked my neighbor when she tried to stop them. She finally gave up, telling us to take them, but still asking for her money. That's when the officer told her to turn around and put her hands behind her back, telling her she was under arrest for unlawful restraint of minors. As they handcuffed her, my neighbor lost it completely. She said they couldn't do this to her, saying she was helping me and that I was the bad one. She even asked if they knew who she was in the neighborhood, her voice getting louder. They led her to the police car while she kept shouting. The entire street was watching now, people on their porches, some even recording with their phones. I pressed charges that day. She was booked for unlawful restraint, with an additional charge of attempted extortion added later. She spent the night in jail before making bail. The court date is next month, and my lawyer says it's an easy case. I got the job, and my first purchase with my new salary was a security camera system for my house. My mom still watches the kids when I need her to, and the neighbors on the other side have become real friends, checking in on us regularly. As for my former neighbor, everyone knows She's the woman who held children hostage over a fake babysitting bill. She put her house up for sale last week. Couldn't handle the shame, I guess. For 6 years, I was part of what I thought was a loving relationship. My partner's family welcomed me into their fold, especially his sister, who I considered a friend. We shared personal stories, and I told her about the religious trauma I'd experienced growing up. My family followed an extremely strict religious doctrine. When I was 22, I made the decision to leave the faith. The results were severe. My parents, siblings, even extended family disowned me. No calls, no visits, no acknowledgement of my existence. It was like I had died to them. During those hard days, my partner's sister seemed to be one of my biggest supporters. She'd listen to me cry, offer advice, and tell me how strong I was for breaking free. Or so I thought. Last month, I was at my partner's apartment when his phone rang. He put it on speaker while looking for something in the kitchen. I heard his sister talking badly about me. She mentioned seeing my post about a restaurant opening and questioned my taste. Then she made a cruel comment about how my family wanted nothing to do with me, suggesting that said something about me. My heart stopped. I was in the living room, and she had no idea I could hear her. My partner quickly grabbed the phone and took it off speaker, looking apologetic, but the damage was done. After thinking about it for a few days, I decided to text her directly. I wasn't going to let this slide. In my message, I told her I'd heard what she said about me. I told her I was hurt that she would talk about me that way, especially bringing up my family's situation. I mentioned that I thought we were close enough to address any issues directly and asked if we could talk about what was bothering her. Her response was defensive. She blamed me for listening and said she was just venting to her brother. She said not everything was about me. I replied that I wasn't listening on purpose since the phone was on speaker. I explained that I was just trying to have an honest conversation, and if I'd done something to upset her, I'd rather know so we could work through it. That's when she got really mean. She made fun of me about giving advice on honest conversations when I couldn't maintain one with my own family. She said it was funny that I thought I could give communication advice when I had failed with my own parents. She even suggested there might be a reason they cut me off. Then she blocked me. I looked at my phone stunned. This woman who had held me while I cried about being disowned, who knew exactly what I'd been through, had just used my deepest trauma against me. What made it even more strange? In the past year, she'd made herself into a momfluencer with a growing social media presence. All her posts were about Christian family values, positive communication, and authentic living. She was always posting perfect photos of her kid, her home, her marriage, all while trying to sell expensive online courses about living your best life through faith. It was too much. So I decided on a little revenge. I took a screenshot of her final text, put a clown emoji over her picture, and posted it to my Instagram story. In my caption, I called out how she had used my religious trauma against me, and then blocked me to get the last word. I reminded everyone that I was disowned for questioning strict religious practices. I explained that everything I had learned about healthy communication came from years of therapy after that abuse. I pointed out that cheap shots about my family situation weren't the Christian values she claimed to stand for in her business. I didn't tag her directly since she'd blocked me, but I did use her name, knowing our mutual friends would make the connection. What I didn't expect was all the support. I have a decent following online, more than hers, many from the ex-religious community who understood what I'd been through. They started sharing my post, adding messages of encouragement. A former colleague sent a message calling her behavior disgusting and saying that using someone's trauma against them is never okay. Another college friend commented on how someone could pretend to be about positivity while being cruel. They said I deserved better. I reshared these messages, turning my initial post into a series about reclaiming my story after religious trauma. It felt good to take control of my story instead of letting her version stand. Within hours, I heard through mutual friends that she was very upset. She was texting my partner, sending screenshots, saying I had declared war on her brand and reputation. She was scared that her carefully crafted online image as a perfect Christian mom was being exposed to our mutual friends and family. My partner sent me one of her messages where she said I was trying to destroy her business. She demanded that I take down my post or she would take legal action. I laughed. All I'd done was share her actual words with the same people she was pretending to be perfect for. There's nothing illegal about showing hypocrisy. Several people who followed both of us quietly unfollowed her and sent me private messages sharing similar experiences they'd had with her two-faced behavior. I never responded to her threats. I didn't need to. The truth was out there, and her reaction only confirmed what everyone was beginning to see, that her perfect Christian mom persona was just a carefully crafted act that crumbled when someone called her out. I worked as a flight attendant for several years before the industry went through some major cutbacks and I found myself between opportunities, as they say. Not unemployed, just strategically waiting for the right position. I've got savings in my own place, so I'm not desperate, just cautiously looking for the right fit. So imagine my surprise when I get a call out of the blue from an old acquaintance I haven't spoken to in at least 5 years. I don't even remember how we met originally. Maybe through mutual friends? Anyway, I'll call him Mr. Entitled since names aren't important here. My phone rings with an unfamiliar number, and against my better judgment, I answer. When I picked up, Mr. Entitled greeted me enthusiastically like we were old friends who spoke regularly. I couldn't immediately place the voice as he chatted away casually. He asked if I was still working as a flight attendant, calling it flying the friendly skies in that overly familiar way. I told him that I was currently between full-time positions but actively looking for work. Mr. Entitled said about the brutal job market, claiming he understood completely. He mentioned he was getting rid of his business after decades of ownership, referring to his customers as suckers who weren't buying anything anymore. I gave a small laugh, feeling uncomfortable with his terminology. Who calls their own customers suckers? I figured maybe he was just having a rough time with his business. I agreed that things were challenging in the current economy, keeping my response vague and polite. That's when Mr. Entitled started bragging about splitting his summer between his New England estate and his West Coast beachfront property. He complained about the unbearable southern summer heat and made sure to emphasize that his beach house was in an extremely desirable area right on the water. I commented that having to choose between two vacation homes was a heck of a problem to have. We both laughed, though mine felt forced. I was beginning to wonder why he was calling after all these years just to brag about his vacation properties. Mr. Entitled then smoothly moved to the real reason for his call. He told me that his elderly aunt had been living with him, describing her as very overweight, barely mobile, and requiring constant care. He said they needed someone trustworthy to stay with her during their 3-month summer vacation. I made a sound as I began to realize where this conversation was heading. He continued by telling me it would be a 7-day-a-week commitment for the entire 3 months, quickly adding that it would be light duty, just helping her eat and providing basic first aid if needed. I pointed out that what he was describing sounded like full-time caretaking to me, not light duty at all. Mr. Entitled confirmed that it was indeed full-time, but said it wasn't difficult work. He emphasized that I would have my own room in their southern home, as if this was a major selling point. When I asked if the house had air conditioning, he admitted it didn't but claimed the windows could be opened for a nice breeze. I was stunned into silence, trying to process what he was suggesting. 3 months of round-the-clock elderly care in a hot, non-air-conditioned house while he enjoyed his luxury vacation homes. Then came the financial offer. Mr. Entitled announced they were prepared to pay $200 per week, calling it a great opportunity. My jaw hit the floor. That worked out to less than $1.20 an hour for 24/7 care. I politely declined his offer, trying to be diplomatic despite my shock. Mr. Entitled seemed confused by my refusal, asking why I would turn down the opportunity since I wasn't currently working. I told him that I was job hunting, not looking for caretaking work, especially not at that rate. He then had the nerve to suggest that my flight attendant experience qualified me for the role, saying I knew all about first aid and serving food and stuff. I heard what he was saying, as if serving drinks on planes somehow prepared me to be a healthcare provider. I told him that being a flight attendant didn't qualify me as a healthcare worker and that $200 a week for around-the-clock care was extremely low. Mr. Entitled dismissed my concerns, repeating that it was light duty and emphasizing the free room as though that made up for the low pay. When I asked if he would work for $200 a week, he avoided the question, saying that wasn't the point. I said it was exactly the point. I wouldn't work for that amount, and I doubted he would either. Mr. Entitled expressed frustration at what he called my difficult attitude. He claimed they had thought of me because I was so nice and that nobody else they knew would be as perfect for this role. I understood this in my head. Nobody else would be desperate or naive enough to accept this proposal. I thanked him for thinking of me but repeated that this wasn't something I could do. Undeterred, Mr. Entitled said he would call me the following week to see if I'd changed my mind, suggesting that the summer heat might make me reconsider. I told him my answer wouldn't change, but he dismissed this, saying we'll see before ending with a talk soon. I hung up the phone feeling baffled. The audacity of some people never ceases to amaze me. He hadn't reached out in 5 years, barely remembered what I did for a living, and thought I'd jump at the chance to be a severely underpaid caretaker while he enjoyed his beach house. I immediately blocked his number. If that's what he considers a great opportunity, I'd hate to see what he considers exploitation. My home is not part of an HOA, yet somehow they still manage to be a constant pain in my life. Let me give you some background. I live in the suburbs of a major metro area in a neighborhood that's basically a patchwork of different developments built over the years. I chose my house because it wasn't part of an HOA. Freedom to do what I want with my property without some power-tripping neighbor telling me my mailbox is the wrong shade of beige. Yes, please. The problem is that my property backs onto a neighborhood that does have an HOA, and they border my lots on the back and one side. The side portion is mostly a field with some wooded areas. You'd think they'd be busy enough policing their own residents, but harassing me is more important. What's rich is that they don't even enforce their own rules within their boundaries. One house does major truck engine repairs in their driveway regularly. Driving past it is like walking through a toxic waste dump. There's another guy who parks his enormous truck halfway on the sidewalk, completely blocking it. And don't get me started on the house behind me that sets off massive illegal fireworks several times a year. Even during high wildfire risk seasons when burning debris lands on my roof, fence, and the nearby dead trees and leaves. This past fall, some intoxicated guy from a few houses away climbed my 6-foot fence and tried to break into my home. Another neighbor loves burning trash, and the nasty smoke blows directly into my yard, making it unusable when they decide to have their trash burning parties. I'm careful about picking my battles. Unless someone is trying to break in, or there are dogs running loose and being a hazard, I mind my own business, which makes it frustrating that the HOA representatives are so determined to police me. A few years ago, runoff from their neighborhood was causing my basement to repeatedly flood. I consulted professionals who installed French drains to direct water away from my home's foundation. Before the drains, the water would flow equally into my yard and down their walking path, eventually pooling in the woods past my property. The French drain now catches the runoff coming into my yard and directs it parallel to their path, releasing it at the corner of my fence right around where the water used to pond anyway. One day, this HOA lady noticed what I'd done and lost it. She started yelling that I couldn't redirect water onto their property. I tried explaining that the water was coming from their development in the first place, and I was just protecting my home from flooding. She said that I needed permission from the homeowners association. I reminded her that I don't belong to their HOA and that this was my property where I was handling water that came from their development. She threatened that we'll see about that before walking off. Nothing came of her threats. My home is more important than their already muddy, waterlogged path. The audacity of trying to tell me what I can do on my own property to protect it from their runoff. Fast forward to a couple of weeks ago. I had my crumbling deck replaced. Before I could replace my fence, I needed to remove a couple of trees. Today, workers started installing the new fence. Within minutes of them leaving for the day, I noticed a woman standing on the footpath facing my property and taking pictures. I went outside to see what was going on. I asked if there was a problem or if I could help her with something. This sour-faced woman was radiating hostility. She barely acknowledged me, wouldn't make eye contact, and started moving away without responding. I asked why she was taking pictures of my property. As she was walking away, she finally said she was on private property. I pointed out that she might be on HOA property, but she was taking pictures of my property, which I found disturbing. She claimed she was taking pictures of this property, as if I couldn't see her camera pointed directly at my house and new fence. I wasn't dealing with a reasonable person. We'd moved from ignoring me to gaslighting me about what she was doing. I just said okay and went back inside thinking she'd leave. Instead, she sneaked back to take more pictures. I was about to grab my phone and record her to make her uncomfortable, but she left before I could get back outside. It's infuriating. I chose this house to avoid HOA nonsense, yet here I am, dealing with their harassment. I'm maintaining my property, fixing things that need repair, and minding my own business. Meanwhile, they ignore problems in their own neighborhood but feel entitled to police me when I'm not even under their jurisdiction. I don't understand what's wrong with people. I'm following all local ordinances and codes. I'm not doing anything that affects their property values. I'm taking care of my home and protecting it from issues that their development is causing. There are too many entitled people in this world who think they have the right to control others, and somehow I ended up living next to an entire association of them. I work as an electrician's apprentice. Hard work, but I like it better than my old job. The company gives us bright neon orange shirts with their logo to wear on the job. Makes sense for safety and marketing, I guess. Last summer, I got stuck digging a trench all day. 8 full hours of breaking through hard clay with a shovel and pickaxe. It was hot, but at least it was dry. I'll take hot and dry over mud or standing water in my trench any day of the week. After I finished up, I dusted myself off and changed out of my work boots. My route home takes me past the downtown riverfront area where there's this nice greenway that runs through the city. Since the temperature was dropping a bit and there was a nice breeze coming in, I figured I'd take a short walk to cool off before heading home. About 30 minutes into my walk, I'm completely beat. My ADHD brain had somehow forgotten that I'd just spent my entire workday digging through clay by hand. What was supposed to be a short walk had me ready to collapse. I spotted a nice patch of grass a few feet off the path with a great view of the river, so I just plopped down to rest and enjoy the scenery. I put in my earbuds, started playing some music, and just sat there watching the water. It was peaceful for about 5 minutes until I noticed some commotion behind me. At first, I just ignored it. When you spend enough time downtown, you learn to tune out random yelling. But this screaming just wouldn't stop, so I turned my head to look. Big mistake. I locked eyes with this guy who was waving his arms and screaming so hard his face was red. He was pointing at me and making the take out your earbuds gesture. I pulled one earbud out and asked him what his problem was. He walked over, standing over me with his hands on his hips, and told me to take out my earbuds and answer his question. His tone was aggressive and he even threw in a curse word, like I was somehow in the wrong. I took out both earbuds and looked up at him, asking what question he was talking about. He told me that he'd been asking me where the kids' playground was for 5 minutes. I told him in equally colorful language that I had no idea, mentioning that I don't have kids. I didn't see why I needed to be polite when he was being so rude. That's when he said something that made me see red. He told me not to talk to him like that because I worked there. After spending 10 years as a retail manager, a job that completely broke me, I thought I was done with the "you work here" right nonsense. But here it was again, following me to a park of all places. All I could say was to question who actually works at a park, making sure to use air quotes to show my disbelief. The guy pointed at my bright orange shirt, saying I was wearing the park maintenance uniform. I looked down at my shirt and told him that it was my work shirt from the electrical company. not a park employee uniform. He said I was lying, saying he'd seen maintenance workers wearing similar orange shirts. I stood up, suddenly not feeling so tired anymore, and tried to explain that I had just finished a long day digging trenches and was just taking a break before heading home. I said again that this was an electrician company shirt, not a park uniform. He said he would report me and asked for my employee number. I shouted back that I didn't have one because I didn't work at the park. A woman who had been walking by stopped and asked if everything was okay. The guy turned to her and said that I, who he still believed was a park employee, was refusing to help him find a playground for his kids. I threw my hands up and told her that I wasn't a park employee but just an electrician sitting there enjoying the view. The woman looked confused and then told him that the playground was just around the bend, about 200 yards down the path. The guy thanked her smugly and said her behavior was how park employees should act. He added that he would be speaking to my supervisor. The woman then told him that she didn't work there either and just visited the park regularly with her kids. His face turned red again as he asked why she was interfering. She replied that she stepped in because he was harassing someone in a public park. He denied this, saying that I was refusing to do my job. By this point, other people had noticed the commotion and were starting to gather. An older man stepped forward and asked if there was a problem. The guy pointed at me and said his complaint that I had refused to direct him to the playground. I groaned and said once more that I didn't work at the park. The older man then said that while I didn't work there, he actually did. Everyone went quiet. The older man was wearing a green polo with an actual park logo on it. The guy's face went from red to pale as he asked if the older man was the park manager. The older man said that he was the head of maintenance and said that the orange shirts, like mine, were from the electric company that had been working on the north side lighting. He pointed out that actual park staff wore green polos like the one he was wearing. The guy looked back at me, then at my shirt, then at the park employee. He tried to save face by saying that I should have just told him that instead of being rude. I couldn't believe it, and told him that I had told him that multiple times. The park maintenance head asked the guy to lower his voice since he was disturbing other park visitors. He repeated the directions to the playground that the woman had given earlier. The guy looked around, probably realizing that everyone was staring at him. Without another word, he walked off in the direction of the playground. The park maintenance guy told me sorry, mentioning that they often deal with entitled visitors who think everyone in the park works for them. I told him not to worry and shared that after 10 years in retail, I was familiar with that type of person. After the guy left, the woman who had stopped to help told me she had seen the whole thing. She told me he had been following me for almost a minute, yelling at my back while I walked with my earbuds in. When I sat down, he assumed I was ignoring him on purpose. She said some people just can't accept that not everyone is there to serve them. I nodded, too tired to say much more. I thanked her and the park maintenance guy for stepping in, gathered my things, and decided it was finally time to head home. As I was leaving, I saw the guy at the playground sitting alone on a bench while his kids played. He looked at me as I walked past. I just smiled and gave him a friendly wave, which seemed to make him even angrier. Some people never learn. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.